floor of a building that is not marketable, not something that the market can handle. And it is, again, within the interpretation of public infrastructure. And so that's what we're referring to on when we talk about building public infrastructure that supports the attraction of private investment.
What's Mr. Chair, what's an example then? Skyway, connections, things like that?
I would say extraordinary and Chris, you can help me with this, but extraordinary mechanism for wet lab support that would support the entire building, but would not be supported by an individual lab or an individual floor of the building. Mechanical systems that are beyond what any one individual company would be able to support.
By the way, I just want to remember to mention to members Wheelock and Campbell, I'm doing my best to look over here and seeing when you're raising, but feel free to blurt out, hey, let me talk, okay? Thank you. Good, okay, so you want to pick that up again, Patrick? All right, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Okay, and then real briefly, one thing that has changed since the last time this board met, we have final approvals for the Discovery Walk project to proceed. The bids for the base project and the snowmelt system have been approved. The community structures are having to go out to rebid. But for the rest of the project, construction will begin in early 2022. We're excited about getting started on this project. Like Heart of the City, this is not something that came up overnight. This is a project that's been under discussion since 2018 with a lot of input along the way, as our city colleagues have shared it in the past in terms of the number of meetings and conversations and input sessions. We'll be starting on the south end at the 500 block and the 400 block and working our way northward. It should cover 2 construction seasons, assuming the weather cooperates. So we're excited about getting started on that project. And then looking forward,
Go ahead, Council President.
Okay, I'm going to take a moment here to share some feedback that Council has been discussing, not only related or not even specifically related to Discovery Walk, but related to the overall budgeting and the work so far on DMC. So it's a little bit awkward timing, but we thought it would
I think this is a helpful time to do that.
So as Council President, I am representing my colleagues, not my own perspectives. So I wanted to share some of the high-level things that I've heard, and Mayor, feel free to pipe in as well after I've shared a few things. And I wrote notes, so I was sure to not forget something, so excuse me for reading from my notes. But one of our main concerns as we think about continuing to approve these projects, of course, is the operations and maintenance costs, because as these projects are completed and the DMC investment is over, it's of course back to largely the city to take on those expenses of operations and maintenance. So that the city, of course, means our community overall and those that pay taxes in our community or assessments in one way or another. So we want to be really thoughtful as we continue this planning that we are thinking about how to build projects that incorporate this understanding, because they're low maintenance or they are just using our resources really smartly so that we maintain a reasonable O&M budget. So for instance, as we think about operating Heart of the City, we're going through a few different models for potentially covering those expanded costs. And in order to do that, we are looking at how best to avoid a tax levy increase, but it still means that those dollars have to come from somewhere in our budget or somewhere in an expanded way. So a major concern of mine, and I think others on council, is that we don't want to price some of our small businesses and what really makes downtown special from a retail perspective and restaurant perspective. We don't want to price out those entities because of increased assessments to those entities. So even a targeted approach, which I think is reasonable and on the table, would still have implications for the businesses that occupy those space, many of which are not large corporations and run on very lean budgets. So that's one big piece of feedback I wanted to be sure to share. There also has been some discussion, of course, around accessibility. It's one of our key priorities. I know that we are designing to absolutely meet ADA guidelines, and we're on a track to do so, of course. But I think there's always an opportunity to consider using universal design or more accessible design as much as possible. So look forward to continuing to be sure those perspectives are represented, because what's good for some who may have limitations to mobility is indeed good for all of us. A couple other quick thoughts.
No, take your time. I'm going to remember Wheelock, I see you, and we'll get you in the queue.
Okay. Another concept is the need to continue to focus on local vendors and consultants. So we love the idea of Discovery Walk's commitment to local artists, and of course the co-design process, which we've talked about before, but really continuing to be thoughtful as we invest these resources, that we're really keeping them in our community and